Please welcome our panel, The State of the Industry, Exploring the AI and ML DataOps Market, with Jeff Mills from iMerit, Sumit Agarwal from Gartner, and Ethan Kurzweil from Bessemer Venture Partners.
Ethan, Sumit, thanks for joining us today. We've had great conversations over the past few hours with executives and practitioners on how to cross the chasm from R&D into production and how to solve some of the pain points across the process within the ML and AI ecosystems. I think that starts to beg the question, what should companies really be spending their time building and why? There's so many challenges to solve in this space, but from the investor community, from the markets community, I really want to get a better understanding of what people should really be spending their time building within this space. And with all the attendees we have today, I have no doubt there's many who are in the earlier stages, and this could really help them better target what they focus their time on. So Ethan, I'll start with you. Bessemer is one of the oldest VCs in the world. I think it was established over some 110 years ago. And not on top of that, you've been there for like 13 years. So clearly you have a good read of successful companies and what they look like when they're building them out. What are you looking for in them right now? What excites you within the companies coming out of the AI and machine learning operations ecosystem?
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. It's good to be here on this panel. Hopefully these theses that I'll share now are not 110 years old, although Bessemer has been investing for a long time. I'm not sure that would be the right approach for something cutting edge like AI, but I've been looking at this space for a couple of years, and so I can share kind of what we've learned, what we think are interesting approaches, and what ultimately we're looking to make investments along. I start with kind of a high-level observation, right? That the old data stacks that companies use are unbundling. They're fragmenting into best-of-breed solutions along each part of the data value chain, from the collection of data, everything you do now in kind of digital experiences with engaging your customers generates some data, whether it's like a point-of-sale checkout system to ERP data to data involved in the creation of product. There's data just spinning out of all of these things. And so there's this beginning process of just collecting it, getting it into a form where it's usable, whether that's a warehouse or a data lake or some real-time data system, and then being able to transform and normalize it to be in a form where you can do more advanced techniques on it that we commonly think of as AI or machine learning. And to do that, you have a debundling, decoupling of the things that are involved in even that step, from training model, from getting your data into a format where a model can be trained, to training the model, to then error correcting the model, to monitoring the model, to then ultimately being able to run the model in production and adjust some system based on what the model is telling you. And so each segment of a statement that I just said, I feel like that's a category. That's a category for startups to be able to disrupt the way that process was done or not done or done poorly in the past. And we're seeing like big, pretty interesting, exciting companies, some of them very highly valued, some of them with lots of revenue already across each of those things. A couple of our theses that maybe I'll just throw out here for discussion or to give some sense of what at Bessemer Venture Partners we're excited about right now. The first is like, how do we empower data scientists to be quicker, more rapid, empower them with the kinds of software tooling that we've seen in other categories of technical product, from product managers to developers to all the different parts of the technical stack, infrastructure engineers, security engineers. Everyone now is empowered to be able to bring their own software to their job function. And data scientists are no different. I think it's happened later with data scientists because you needed the data that they could get access to. How do you take complexity away from the process of doing data science at every step of that value chain? And then how do you kind of observe, monitor, make sure the data and the models that underpin the data are in good shape, and that you can troubleshoot problems quickly? And then I'll just throw out a fourth just before I wrap up here, and that's what's the sort of next wave of analytics and business intelligence that like takes stock of that data and spins it back into the business. So those are just four theses that we are excited about and investing along these days.
Two quick follow-ups to that. So one is you're kind of talking about some of the characteristics you're looking for within the areas that they're solving. Are there characteristics within those companies themselves that pop up for you to be kind of, really good leading indicators to you that success is going to follow?
Definitely. There are a few things we look for across all of those theses and other theses that we come up with. Within the data stack, there's a few things we found that we like to see. This doesn't mean every company's going to have all of these things, because there's cases where one or another may not be applicable. But we do have 4 principles. The first is it's going to be ecosystem driven. What we mean by that is, like, are you being a good partner to other parts of that chain? Because there's some very big players in that chain, already big public companies that if you're allied with can be an advantage in your go-to-market or your technical, the way the interoperability works between technical products. Think Snowflake and Fivetran, they connect together very well, something like that. For sure. So we look for ecosystem, sort of robust ecosystems. The other is, do you exhibit community leadership? That could be through an open source community or maybe just a Slack community of users in a data science forum or advanced machine learning forum. Is there a strong bottoms-up community-oriented feel? Because the data science world has come out of, in some cases, academia, or come out of, as sort of less enterprise roots, I guess I would say. This sort of bottoms-up community feel tends to be very important, maybe more important than traditional forms of marketing. Does the product remove friction from the stack? That's a characteristic of companies that we look for in a lot of contexts. Is really important here, because there's lots of, I just described sort of 7 parts of how data gets analyzed, or how data gets to where it can be useful to a company. If there's friction in any one of those, you have a sort of weakest link phenomenon. So does the product...
I really like that, because a lot of times in machine learning and AI, it's about what's sexy and new, and we're talking about things flying over our heads or virtual reality machines and stuff. And sometimes what sexy really is just removing the friction from the process and helping companies scale. And I think that's a super valid point. I do want to get Sumit into the conversation here. Sumit, you basically eat and breathe ML for a living. You've been covering the space for a really long time. I think you just recently completed your 1,000th client interaction since you've joined Gartner, which is quite impressive. And so, I guess it's a similar question to you, but coming from a little bit of a different lens. You're looking at the market in such a vast way. You're having so many conversations within the market. What are you seeing right now that gets you excited about companies that are being built? What do you think the executives and practitioners that are joining us today should be thinking about as they build out the products and companies that they're currently creating?
Great question, Jeff, and thank you for having me in this panel. Really excited to be here with you and Ethan. So you're right. I mean, I live, breathe, and probably dream about AI and ML as well, which may not be a good thing all the time. Right? But I think, I would say that this is a very exciting times, for AI and ML as a space. There's so much innovation happening, both within the vendor space and within the open source space. So, it's been really fun. Now, I get to interact with, I guess, both sides, with practitioners who are trying to build solutions within their organizations, within the enterprise, and within the startups and the industry leaders as well. So I think there's innovation I'm seeing on both sides. Right? But you use the word sexy, Jeff, and I see it as, I like things to be boring. So for me, it is more about, are we able to do things in a repeated fashion, right? Again and again and again, with consistency, with quality, with scalability. So I kind of see it as backwards, right? Where think from the point where you're trying to solve a business problem. Right. So think from that angle, that are you able to solve a business problem, provide value to the end user and to the business, and then kind of start coming back from there. So is your solution scalable? Can you do it multiple times? Do you have the right data available, easily, good quality, you're able to trust it? Right? So it's kind of the similar 7 steps that Ethan had, but I'm just looking at it slightly in a different manner. Do you have an architecture, which is where you're able to embed all these, best practices that you need, and being able to do this in a responsible fashion? So, there's a lot of conversation happening around, and there's a lot of regulations coming in this space as well, right? Where are you able to do AI in a very ethical way, in a fair manner? Are you able to explain it to your end users, to the data scientists as well, to internal consumers of those models, right? Because we a lot of times consider AI models as black boxes. So I like the space. I find it exciting, but I want to make it as boring as possible, where you can do this in as many steps and as many times as possible.
Sumit raises a good point. Not just about are you using AI in an ethical way, but are you protecting the data in the right way too? Because we've seen, it's no secret that there's been a number of very, very prominent data breaches. It's almost like, what big company at this point has not been breached? And so there's a whole class of software around solving that problem too, that I think is kind of a necessary, it's not sufficient, but it's a necessary condition for AI to be workable, because you need good data and you need to be able to regulate which data is used where before you can start to run some of these advanced techniques on it.
Yeah, I think security and compliance as well, right, is getting much more highly looked at, especially as we start moving into other verticals as well, like healthcare and medical AI, et cetera. So I'm definitely seeing that as well on a daily basis. One of the questions that I wanted to kind of touch on a bit here is, where, from an ML data ops perspective, do you two think we should be concentrating on as an industry? Do you think it's trying to get more data? Do you think it's higher quality data? Do you think it's faster velocity of data? Just curious if you had thoughts. I feel like you touched a little bit on that, Ethan, but Sumit, I don't know if you have some thoughts on that specifically. Again, just knowing the market so well and where some of those kind of holes might be.
Yeah, Jeff, I think we are at a stage in time where we're looking at bringing in a lot of these software-driven practices into AI, right? Where in software you can have these repeatable pipelines on how to build software, how to deploy it, and how to test it in between. Right? So similar concepts in AI and ML, where can we build these data pipelines in a way where these can be deployed really fast. Right? The data is accessible to the data scientists, to the models when you deploy them into production, and on an ongoing basis. Same thing on the ML side, where are you able to deploy these models as frequently as your business needs it? Right? In some cases, I've seen where it may be good to train the model maybe once in 6 months, maybe even once a year, right? Because your data doesn't change that frequently. But then there are scenarios where the models may need to be trained and redeployed, nightly or daily, right? Even multiple times a day. So the tool set, the ops that go with that should be able to support those requirements.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Ethan, if you had an entrepreneur from our audience in front of you today, and then you went and told them, do this one thing, whether it's to build a product, whether it's to learn a space, solve a problem, what would your advice be?
Yeah, I would say there's so many problems that exist today around making this like sort of vision of data, of a data aware company real, where the data is stored in the right form, it can quickly be analyzed in near real time so that an action can be taken. And there's so many different slices of where we're not quite there yet, unless you're at a company that's at the very, very cutting edge of this stuff. And so my advice is always like, as exciting as the advanced stuff is, I kind of feel like we're in an era now where the boring stuff that Sumit talked about, the enabling technologies that remove friction and that just enable a data engineer or somebody involved in some flow of the data pipeline to solve their problem in a way that's replicable to lots of different situations. And so where we find the companies that are doing the best right now are the ones where they found sort of a pain point that's broadly universal and horizontal, that lots of companies, as they adopt modern data tooling, have this same problem. Of the question you asked before, I think there's one very clear answer or part of that multiple choice that you gave Sumit that stands out, and that's that getting data in and then monitoring it and making sure it's high quality, because there is a move to store more and more data and be able to dump it into various places. But oftentimes you're not storing the right thing, or you are storing the right thing, but you're storing so much other stuff that it's very hard to parse out what's actually useful, and then be able to monitor and keep those connections going in high quality ways so that it's not breaking all the time, and so that you don't need a lot of people around to be able to constantly make sure whatever processes you've engineered because you've gotten data into a system break. And that's a problem that I think there's a lot of companies solving it or attempting to solve it in various ways, but I'm not sure we've universally solved it in the way that we've sort of universally solved some other challenges with developing products.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm thinking about your friction point earlier, and then combining that with this high value data point, that with high value data and storing this correctly and building the right pipeline with that, you're removing some of those friction points that you were talking about earlier. So when you combine those two together, that becomes pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Sumit, we in the beginning, we in the middle, we in the end. Where we at in this market right now? Where you've talked to 1,000 customers. You've been researching this forever. Where do you think we're at?
I would like to say we are still in the beginning. I mean, I'm just thinking, a few years back when I started building my first models, it was more of experimenting. Can we do this? We were not really thinking that, how to put it into production. Is it going to come out with any value, right? It was more just validate the technology. Can we do this? To, I guess, fast forward, a few years, and it's more like where we're talking to a spectrum of organizations. Some are saying, I'm on my 10th model, right, or first 10 models. Mm-hmm. Some say that I'm, want to go from my 10th to my 100th model, and I'm talking to organizations who are thinking in terms of thousands. Right? But I think there's still a lot more to go, because we still have so many challenges in the technology that have not been solved, and so I feel like we're still just scratching the surface. There's so much opportunity that's still out there.
So Ethan, that's the market perspective. What's the investor perspective?
Well, I totally agree. I mean, there's tons of opportunities for startups here. That's why it makes it sort of like a category that's really interesting to invest in. So once you're past the beginning, it's less interesting for startups to get started now, because the companies you need are started 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. I think in sort of batch processing of data and doing static analysis, the kinds of things that you use a data warehouse for, and and kind of older school business intelligence, we're past the beginning. I think we have fairly robust systems for ingesting data, transforming it, and then doing analysis on it. I think where the future is, and we're really early on, is just being able to take action on data in real time. It's not a person doing analysis and coming up with insights, but it's a system that takes the data in, evolves some sort of methodology around what it does with it, and then changes something as a result. And it could be some real-time experience you have on the web. It could be a dynamic price that's developed when you're going to make a purchase or something like that, or dozens and dozens of different outputs that could be aided by a real-time look into some particular process.
Yeah, we've covered human in the loop quite a bit over the day here, and definitely think that's becoming a big part of. We internally here at iMerit talk about it being near time, because we're pretty careful about saying things being real time. It might be seconds or minutes after something happened, but things are definitely moving in that direction. Ethan, Sumit, it's been amazing to have you guys join us today. Thank you so much for bringing these very, very valuable and unique perspectives to this audience. We couldn't be more appreciative. Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, Sumit.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure.